going to take like a second for the computer to like start generating those contours. But with this highlighted, you can see that we're basically creating a contour map, but we're doing it not so much through the Rhino command line, we're doing it through like an actual visual process. So let's say that like, okay, cool, I just made, let me back up for a second. So what's happening in this component is it's telling Rhino to take this mesh, which is identified as this shape, and cut it along a direction, which is the z-axis. So that's what unit z stands for. And this distance parameter is the distance, and it uses Rhino's units, so right now that's at 10 feet. So if we were to set this at 5, that would be contour this mesh at a distance of 5 feet, and it'll take longer to process because that's twice as many contours. And when you have a computer that's not like slowly dying and out of ramp like mine, it will act a lot faster. So that's at 5 feet. As you can see, those contours are a lot closer. So you can use this slider, and if I had a more simple shape, I feel like it would be a better example because you'll see like how it changes. But again, this is the distance between contours. So it gives you like the ability to like kind of create model geometry off of like desirable outcomes, if that makes sense. So it's generative in that sense. So another thing we can do is like get creative with contouring. So it's like, okay, this is a contour map of vertical contours, but what if I wanted to use something like unit y to tell the contour command to create contours along the y-axis versus the z? So kind of similar to how we made like a sectional model last week by telling Rhino to do it along the y-axis. We're just telling Grasshopper, which I think is freezing my computer right now, to do it along the y-axis. So if I come over here, let's give it a second. I'm now realizing that 7 feet along the y-axis is like gonna make a million lines. So yeah. So moving on, let's go to this model. Thanks. So I guess to give you like a really quick run through of what Grasshopper is, maybe in more like generic detail. And open the program up again by using Grasshopper. There's also this little icon here, which is like the Grasshopper icon. So you can use that to open it up. Let's see how this one's doing. It's not happy. Probably have to close that model out. Let me just start closing a bunch of programs. Sorry.
Good old task.
Yeah, little lifesaver. Okay. Okay, let's just kill everything. All right. Cool. All right, so back to Rhino. Back to Grasshopper. So the nice thing about Grasshopper is it does use the same language, or very close language to Rhino. So if you're like beginning to understand Rhino language like extrude or like revolve or mirror, you can always use that in Grasshopper. So those commands or those components still exist, you know, within this software. So they try to keep it easy, even though it's still like really complicated in the end. But one thing I'm going to do really quick is just create a really simple point, and I'm going to do that by the construct point component. So if you're to use something like that, what it's doing is it's creating a point along the XYZ of Rhino. So the default is 0, so it's kind of at the origin. But again, kind of like the contouring command, you can always like adjust these parameters so that it's like moving kind of like algebra, it's like moving along a point. You kind of begin to control like where this thing lands. And what's nice is you can always like copy and paste things. So if I were to like disconnect, so I have these 2 points. So I have one at the origin, which is the default, and I have one at like, x equals 4, y equals 5. You can always use, again, Rhino language to create geometry in between points. So that's a line in between point A and point B. You can also use the extrude command to extrude objects. So in this case, I have an extrusion of this line, but it's not doing anything because there's no specified distance or direction. So the amplitude component will give it that information. So it's asking for distance and a direction. I'm going to tell it to do it in the z-axis. I'm going to tell it to extrude it at 5 feet as a slider. So again, this is kind of where you can start to see like where the program becomes like more generative, because you can tell it to change geometry as you're working on it.
Is Grasshopper most useful as a sort of console, creating your own console and remote for Rhino?
Definitely, yeah.
That's its purpose.
I would say that's probably the best thing to do. And it's also really good at plugging in data from other sources. So Grasshopper, I think, is made by McNeil, but there's like a million plugins that you can get for it for free, which is nice. So this is Kangaroo, for example, and Kangaroo is all about like physics, so you can apply like gravity and stuff like that to objects. One that's really helpful is called Ladybug. So this is like environmental data that you can import into Grasshopper. And I can show you what that looks like really quickly, but it'll like tell you how the sun works at a specific point on the planet. So you can start to plug in different data, but also use it as a platform for like generative modeling. And then that data can actually inform your model as it goes.
So if you don't have Grasshopper open and you are just in Rhino and you're making new objects, extruding them, is Grasshopper like working with it in the background, or if it's only?
That would be amazing if it was like creating the flow as you're like working.
Yeah.
And that should be like
Seems
a
like it could.
Yeah.
It has like the power. Okay, this map.
Yeah, that would be a really interesting idea for sure.
Then you can just like track everything you've done.
Right.
It's like a history. I think Rhino does have a history.
It has history,
It
yeah.
has history, yeah.
So yeah, that's a good point.
It's not a
But you can't like
battery form.
scroll new changes.
Right, yeah. So
You can go back and actually
right. Then that's why like Grasshopper was kind of created. So if you were to like create a bunch of points, you're like, what is happening? And you're like, what did I just do? You can always like scroll up on your command line and it'll like give you that information, but that's not helpful. Do you know anything else about that, Heather, as far as like a graphic history? Have you heard of anything like that?
Not in a graphic history.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so is Grasshopper also useful if you, it looks like various connections, if you change a connection early, it'll alter all.
Everything,
Okay,
yeah,
great.
all the flow, yeah. So I'll show you like a more complicated definition. And what's nice about this too, as a concept, is, okay, I do have a folder. I was like, is this on the backup? You can always open these definitions up at a different time and use them. So in this case, this was that example I showed you in that video. So I'm just gonna make, actually I have to kind of recall what this was. So there are those circles. I'm just gonna make a curve really quick. So from like here to here. And then I'm setting the attractor curve. So what that's telling the program to do is like create, like, adjust the scale of those circles, like wherever that curve is. So if I were to like move it, it starts to adapt and change to that curve. So you can always like apply this to like a design or like use it on a site plan where like, it's more like maybe helpful, or if you're interested in like these circles that are changing. But yeah, I don't know if that's like really helpful, but the idea that like you can always open it back up and like use it on objects. Another,
Or use pre-made ones.
yeah, these are all like stuff I've used recently. So like the waffle, so this can get pretty complicated. So if I had like a shape I wanted to create a rig model out of, just say it's a, you know, this kind of square, I'm gonna patch it. So I'm just gonna use the point solid commands to manipulate the surface. So we kind of learned that last week. So, you know, I'm gonna make a bump up here. And what I'm doing right now, like you can do a grasshopper pretty much, but you just have to script it up, which takes a while. So I'm gonna offset this surface so that it's like thick, so it has a thickness. And I don't know if this is gonna crash my computer, but let's set this. And it is because it's not in the right units. So I'm gonna change this. Inches. So
Did you find the script somewhere?
I made this one, yeah. You can also find, that's the cool thing, that it's like open source, so you could like just go online and be like, I need to do this thing, and you just download someone else's. And, I mean, yeah. Sorry, my computer's performance is not holding up really well right now. And that's another thing too, and something that I always lose track of is like, it's really easy to like forget that this is like operating in the background. So like you'll do something and it'll like stall out and you're just like, what's happening? So you can always like disable Grasshopper from doing certain things. I wish I just had more RAM. So let's like give it a second and see what happens.
Doesn't sound good.
No. No, it's not happening.
Abort.
Yeah. Alright, let's restart. Sorry, this keeps happening.
Don't do it, it's gonna totally crash.
Yeah, I'm gonna do it a better way this time. Cool. So that definition was generated for like the laser cutter, so it wants a really small model. So what I'll do really quick is just make one of those rectangles and make it like 2 inches by 2 inches. Maybe 4 inches is better.
Did you make a script that takes contours and puts them in laser cutter form?
You can find that online. Yeah. I haven't really done that yet. Yeah.
Can you change it? So when you find those things online, are you finding are you just like copying in Grasshopper like an image of the network, or is it like a file that you download?
It's like a file you can just download and bring it on in, which is pretty sweet. So I'm gonna make that form again. I'm gonna offset it. I'm just gonna do it at like an inch this time, or maybe like half of an inch. So offset distance at half of an inch. Why is that happening? All right. Why is that not working? 0.5. So that is happening because the tolerance on my units are set at like, it should be offsetting, I'm not sure why. Alright, so we open Grasshopper again. So what I'm gonna do as well is I'm gonna like disable a certain part of this so that it doesn't kind of continue to flow down the line. So that's another method. If you have like a large script like this, you can always disable certain points so that when you're inputting this object, it'll like actually work. So I can walk you through like what's happening, but
It's already over my head.
yeah, exactly. So I'll just kind of like let it do its thing, and I'm not sure if this will freak out again, but
What was that one button you just pressed?
this one right here, that like disables like the component, so that turns it on, that turns it off. So if you have like a big definition, you can always turn off certain parts so that
So nothing like after that will work.
exactly, yeah, kind of like it's like a dam, I guess.
Literally turning off.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, again, this definition is taking, you know, sections of that object. And down the line, it's, well, that's way down the line, but it's basically creating an extrusion of these objects and kind of creating a hole within them so that, you know, you actually have like a waffle model. So, you know, you can always like change these numbers here and that like adjusts certain elements. So if I go back to these contours, you know, if you don't want it at 1/2 inch, you can always like move that. And of course it's gonna take a second because it's like processing everything down the line. But that's just like an example of like what you can do with Grasshopper, and if like any of you like want to do stuff like that, you can always like run it by you, or you can use this definition or whatever. But yeah, does anyone have questions at the moment? It's definitely like a lot to take in. This is like a massive program that is like this vestige on top of Rhino, which is also massive and complicated. So I think just
So
playing.
you make a waffle to make a physical model?
Yeah.
That's,
So this is all. So you could just like throw these objects, and through this definition, it's actually rotating them and spinning them out. But if I can get to like the right thing, so it's like rotating them to be flat, and then it's not moving them because something's happening with the definition. I would have to change, but it's probably because I need a point. So if I just made that, I'm not sure what this is going to do, but it's now moving all of those objects along the line so that you can like throw it into a laser cut file. So it needed that point to tell it to like move it over there, if that makes sense. But and you can always go online, like on Google, if you like I don't know, waffle model grasshopper. And there's tutorials, but then there's also like, you know, you can go onto like, well, not this website, but Grasshopper 3D is the website you can go on to like start like downloading these waffle GHX. That's the file you use to open into Rhino. But like that, you know, I don't necessarily like promote that because like obviously you're not learning the program if you're not like making it, but you can always use that as a tool if you're trying to make something fast. Yeah. And yeah, I guess for the next 10 minutes, I can go over anything that like you're curious about, or if you have questions. I could talk more about Grasshopper. Yeah.
If you knew how you wanted to manipulate your contour lines, how would you do that? Like if you have like a contour and you wanted to make it, instead of like 20 feet, you wanted like, so if you wanted to like change a slope.
like you're regrading.
Yeah.
Grading.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is there like, do you move points around?
Like in Rhino? Or
Yeah.
yeah, so we can go through that. So I'm trying to think. I know last term in the Art of Line Forum, Xana and Michael taught like the break line method, which Xana brought up in class, but that's where you like make a very like rough sketch of like what your landforms will look like. So, and I can draw that out really quick, but you know, if you had this like square area of your site, and you know that there's like this peak happening here, and there's like a 5% grade going down. What you can do really quick is like basically split this object really quick. This. So I'm making these two planes right now. So obviously you'd have to do some math, but you can always use like the points on command to adjust. Like, that this is like 5 feet higher, and that's not a good idea because this is in inches. So it's like 5 or 2 inches higher, 1 inch. You can start to like break your model up into like these like planes. So it definitely takes some time to do. There's no like automatic way of going about it. Yeah.
How many commands do you think you have committed to memory at this point?
I don't know.
That you use most frequently, at least.
At least like 50. Yeah, it's always helpful too because if you're like just typing something in, something will kind of pop up. So if you like, for example, wanted to break these curves into separate things, kind of like CAD, you just like explode it, so that they're separated.
Do you have any examples of something you've done or seen that has used Ladybug?
Yes, I do have an example.
I was curious how it's.
It was a part of this class presentation. Not this one yet. So this was a really quick study. Started at like this slide. So yeah, this was like a really quick study of this like really strange design on Washington Park in Philly. So as you can see, this is like a really quick like sun path, yeah, essentially, yeah. Sun path diagram that shows like where the sun is during winter and like summer. And as you can see in plan, it like what's nice is that like Rhino will also create. You can use like Ladybug to create like shadow studies as well. So if you wanted to do something like that, you would just have to download that plugin. And the tutorials, I would say it would only take like an hour to like understand how to get to that point of like creating a sun path diagram and then also measuring shadows online through tutorials. But you basically like create, like a weather, like a sun thing. I don't know, it's been a while since I've used it, but yeah. Like there's like a radiation analysis. It gets like really specific. Yeah, so I think this is like the component you would use. And